Good morning, guys. Welcome to my unboxing and review of the Master Grade Victory 2 Assault Buster Gundam Ver. Get another mouthful kit this week. So in sharp contrast to last week where I took a look at the high grade Gustav Karl, which is one of the largest grunt suits in high grade, today I'm taking a look at the Victory 2 Assault Buster, which is one of the smallest master grades. In universe, I believe the Victory Gundam is about 14.5 meters tall, which in practice means it's going to be, I think, around 6 inches or so, which puts it a little taller than a standard high grade, but not much more. But don't let the mobile suit's small stature fool you. This box is quite large for a typical master grade, because this box not only includes 2015's Victory 2 Gundam, but it also includes all the option parts to make the the Victory 2 Assault Gundam, the Victory 2 Buster Gundam, or the Victory 2 Assault Buster Gundam. I will also be taking a look at the Victory 2 Gundam Wings of Light optional set, which includes two different effect sets for the Wings of Light, either in blue or in pink, as well as an Action Base 13 to pose the Victory 2 on. I got this kit on Premium Bandai for $78, which is only around $20 more than the kind of standard Victory 2 Gundam in the States. You can find it at retailers for around $55, so for $20 more, the sheer amount of extra stuff you get, in addition to all of the golden parts being actual metallic gold instead of the usual kind of gross injection gold that they do, is quite nice. So of course this is going to be a standard Ver style box with just a very nice kind of simple artwork of the V2 Assault Buster here on the front, kind of transparent behind. You see the different kind of flyers that make up this kit. So what I do know for the base Victory 2 is that while the kit looks fantastic, the articulation is kind of a mess and it's not particularly stable, because similar to things like the Master Grade Delta Plus, there were a bunch of compromises made to it to facilitate its transformation mechanism. I've heard the Assault Buster fixes some of the joints, but we'll see if this thing is just kind of a brick that stands there and looks cool, or if you can actually pose it doing anything. So, just looking at the box, you wouldn't really believe that this is a Premium Bandai exclusive release just looking at it. This is a very kind of standard Ver style box. On the side here you have a bunch of close-up zoom-ins of different parts of the kit, the head, the beam spray gun, the kind of metallic gold shoulders and things like that. You have a nice full, photo of the V2 Assault Buster just standing there. And then of course you have a big accessory spread of the V2 Gundam alongside all of the parts to make the Assault Buster and all the accessories that comes with it. On the other side of the box, you just get a nice photo here of the V2 Assault Buster Gundam in a kind of full, kind of flying charging pose, alongside some information about the Ver line and the additional armor parts that come with the V2 Gundam. So, getting right into it. Inside the box we get 13 bags of runners, which is quite a bit, but keep in mind that all of the kind of metallic gold parts are bagged separately to make sure they don't rub against other runners and kind of tarnish the gold finish. And of course we will get this manual. I don't know how well you can tell on camera, but this is a very thick manual even for a master grade. Yeah, there's a lot in this box. So yeah, this is just showing off some of the V2 Assault Buster Gundam itself, as well as some of the accessories that come with it. Of course, you're going to get a Mega Beam Shield with these 3 shield bits that in universe can kind of project out and fly around and shield the V2 Gundam. I'm not sure if I have the stands to actually display that. It also has Vespers on the side, and you have all of the kind of configurations for the core fighter. Oh, you just have the standard core fighter up here with the large kind of shoulder cannon on it, and then you have the top fighter and the bottom fighter containing the top half or the bottom half of the V2 Gundam respectively. Moving on, you get a full 2-page spread with all of the runners, and it looks like there's going to be quite a bit, and also quite a few parts that aren't going to be used here. After that, you just get right into the build with the core fighters plural. You get 2, so you can either display it as both the top and the bottom flyer, kind of flying alongside each other, or you can display the V2 Assault Buster and have a spare core fighter to display separately. And then of course you have the steps to mount all the equipment onto the core fighters, yeah, and then you have the parts to make the Buster equipment for the core fighter, but previously it was just the Assault equipment. And then it looks like you're going to move on to the arms, which is a little strange because normally you start with the torso, but here you start with the arms. Yeah, and then after that it looks like it's going to be a pretty typical Master Grade build going into the waist and the legs. Okay, and then it looks like here it's going to show off how to assemble the actual Gundam and to make the Assault Gundam. Oh, it looks like you have a full info spread here in both Japanese and in English, which is quite nice. Continuing the V2 Assault assembly, and then moving on here to the Buster Gundam. Yep, the Buster Gundam assembly continues. Of course, you have the assembly of the beam rifle with the grenade launcher attached, and you have it showing off how to use the weapons. with both the beam shield, the beam fan, and the beam rifle. Yeah, then the rest of this seems like it's just going to be a lot of just showing off how to display the V2 Assault Buster in several different forms, including the top fighter and the bottom fighter. And then on the back, we have a color guide and a very extensive decal guide. I don't know if you saw in the bags that dropped, but there's going to be an absolutely massive set of waterslide decals on here. So as for the contents of the bags, so inside the box we get 24 runners, which is quite a massive spread. As you saw in the manual, again, there's going to be a lot in this box, a lot of different options you can display the V2 Assault Buster as, a lot of different accessories, and in addition to the runners, we get a rather large foil color correcting sticker sheet for the, at least for a master grade. It looks like a lot of these are going to be camera stickers and metallic stickers, so things you would expect. Like you have eye cameras here, you have various cameras across the kind of top half of this foil sheet. On the bottom here are parts that are kind of disappointing to see in a master grade. These are going to be a lot of red ring color correcting stickers that you see on the Victory 2 Gundam's joints, like the elbows. I think this was a known thing with the standard 2015 release, that it's unfortunate that you need color correcting stickers for the master grade, but we'll see how they look on the kit. And like I pointed out earlier, you get this absolutely gargantuan sheet of waterslide decals, especially considering how small the V2 Gundam is. Like, again, it's slightly larger than a typical high grade, and you have all of these decals to cram into it. I'm probably not going to use all of these. I will use as many as I can without losing my mind, but yeah, we'll see how they look on the kit. And you also have, inside of a separate bag, this very soft clear pink decal for the beam shield, so we'll see how that looks on the kit. And before we get into the runners of the V2 Assault Buster, just getting into the Wings of Light option parts set. Of course, like I pointed out earlier, you are going to get a set of clear blue Wings of Light, the same wings in clear pink, and a white action base 13, which is always nice to see. This is the best action base that Bandai has ever made, and it is a shame that they don't sell it separately. So, as getting into the runners of the V2 Assault Buster Gundam itself. Okay, so getting into the runners, starting with a set of polycap ball joints. We have PC7 here for a set of just, well, polycap balls for ball joints. Again, it's a little disappointing to see this on a modern master grade, but it looks like polycap inclusion here is going to be fairly minimal, so we'll see how that affects the kit. We get 2 of runner A here, which is a multicolored runner from the original V2 Gundam from 2015. As you can see, my runners were printed in January of 2025. This is going to be a multicolored runner in 3 different colors. We have white here for many armor parts for some armor parts of the V2, including parts for the head, and as well as parts for the core fighter. Like you can see like a tail fin here. We also have parts in red here for a bunch of auxiliary parts, including parts for the feet, as well as parts for the face. And then you have many clear parts that are going to be used in the core fighters. But you might also notice that there's on both A runners, there's going to be a chunk of the runner missing on the left. That is because what on the standard V2 Gundam was either that gross injected gold or just standard yellow. Here is going to be a very nice kind of matte metallic gold. Here in a very similar style to what you would have seen on the Master Grade Hyakushiki 2.0, which is a very nice style of gold that I wish Bandai would do more often, but it is present here, which is quite nice. Runners B1 and B2, still from the original Master Grade V2 Gundam, just going to be many of our main armor parts in this very nice shade of blue. 2 of Runner C, still from the V2 Gundam, for many of our armor parts in white. 1 Runner D, also in white for some auxiliary armor parts, also including our beam sabers and 2 of our sitting pilot figures, presumably for Uso Iwin, to be inside both core fighters, as well as a standing figure for Shakti. 1 Runner E in extremely dark gray, almost black ABS for many of our inner frame parts. You also see hand parts here. It looks like we're going to have swappable finger style hands, which, as you know, I'm a big fan of, and our action base adapter will also be on this runner. 2 of Runner F in that same pretty much black ABS plastic for some more inner frame parts. You see some very distinctive parts for parts like the legs here. Runner G, a small runner in, again, that same very dark gray, almost black color, but this time in PS plastic. It appears this is going to be all of the parts for our standard beam rifle for the V2 Gundam. I didn't mention this earlier, but the beam rifle on the V2 is probably my favorite protagonist Gundam beam rifle. I just really like how it looks. And our last runner from the standard V2 Gundam from 2015, going to be Runner H for our beam effect parts and our beam fan effect part in this very soft kind of typical beam effect plastic here in clear pink. So moving on to runners now, specifically for the Assault Buster V2 Gundam. starting with runner XA here in 4 different colors. Of course, you have the kind of main armor shade of blue here for the additional armor parts, as well as kind of parts for, I'm not sure if it's the beam smart gun in the hand or the like mega beam cannon on the shoulder. You also have some gray frame parts for those. You have a single red kind of accent part here, and then you have a number of plain clear parts in the top left. Runners XB1 and XB2 come joined here for a number of that same kind of very dark gray, almost black ABS parts for many inner frame parts, as well as inner parts for the weapons of the Assault Buster Gundam. You see here specifically, this is very clearly supposed to be the beam smart gun, and this is supposed to be for the shield. 2 of runner XC and that same very dark gray, almost black ABS plastic for some more inner frame parts, as well as some very distinct parts up here for what looks like some kind of missile pods. Runner XD in white for some more armor parts, as well as the top part of the barrel for, I think it's like the mega particle cannon. It's whatever the larger gun is on the V2 Assault Buster's shoulder. 2 of runner XE also in white for some additional armor and weapon parts. You have parts here for, like, I think this is for the beam smart gun, and you have parts here for what look like the Vespers on the waist. And runner XF1 and XF2, XF2 being a copy of the center part of XF1, for some additional blue armor and weapon parts. Again, you see some very distinctive weapon parts here. Presumably for the beam smart gun. And last but certainly not least, runner XG here, and that same kind of very nice matte metallic gold here for all of our additional kind of armor accent parts that are going to be added with the Assault Buster, like kind of added armor parts for the shield, for the shoulder armor, for the crotch, and for the knees. So I'm definitely going to top coat this, obviously, because it comes with water slides, you kind of have to. I was debating whether or not to do matte or gloss top coat. I think this gold is going to really shine in gloss top coat, and I think the V2's design, what with it being very kind of sleek and having a number of kind of organic curves on it, is going to make it look really good in gloss. So we'll see how that looks. So with that very extensive runner list out of the way, I will see you after the build. All right, welcome back. Here's the Victory 2 Gundam. I'm just going to be calling it the V2 Gundam for brevity's sake. Snap built, lightly panel lined, water slide decals applied, and top coated in using Mr. Hobby Premium Gloss Top Coat. As it spins around, the first thing I want to mention is you might notice there's a hole in the lower abdomen. That is because that is where the nose cone of the core fighter is supposed to go when it's transformed to be like kind of the top of the torso for the V2. That brings me to the first thing to talk about with this kit, the build. This is where this kit gets its reputation for being super jank the most. This is a transforming kit, which means a lot of kind of compromises and concessions were made to various parts of the build to facilitate the transformation. In this case, it is to separate the top and the bottom halves to make the top and bottom fighters, as well as having the top of the torso be part of the transformable core fighter that just kind of pops out when not in use. Now, all of these transformable parts are held in place via very small C-clips. I don't know if you can see here, but there's a very tiny C-clip that the top half of which broke off, flew down into the carpet, and I can't find it anymore. So yeah, I can still fit the nose cone back on when it's in core fighter mode, but when it's transformed to be part of the V2 in terms of mobile suit mode, the nose cone is not going back on, so yeah, unfortunate. When the nose cone is back on in core fighter mode, it will look like this. This is, of course, the extra core fighter that comes with this kit. This has the Buster equipment mounted on the back for when I want to make the Assault Buster Gundam. But yeah, the build for this is very kind of unorthodox. I mentioned earlier that I didn't really notice where the torso was being built. That's because it is the core fighter. The core fighter makes up the kind of top half of the torso. You build a kind of small shell that the core fighter kind of fills out when it docks with the rest of the V2 Gundam to make the kind of mobile suit. Unfortunately, the top and the bottom parts are held together by a series of very small, fragile connection points. So because of that and all of the small C-clips, one of which already broke on my kit, I am not going to be showing off the top and bottom fighters. If it's any consolation, I think it looks really dumb. I don't know who would ever want to display it like that, but it's a thing you can do with this kit. And a lot of compromises were made to facilitate that transformation. Of course, those very small myriad connection points that link the top and the bottom do severely hamper articulation, which you will see in a couple of sections. But yeah, apart from that, the build for the arms and the legs are pretty much standard for what you would expect in a master grade. There are some odd parts, like for instance, the front of the elbow here being covered by a piece of armor, the backs of the elbows having a more in-depth construction than you might expect because given the design of this kit, these kind of red cap parts are meant to swing outwards to use as like the beam shield and to deploy the beam sabers and whatever. But yeah, apart from the torso and waist, this build is fairly orthodox. Like the head is pretty normal, the legs are very normal. Apart from the elbows, the arms are fairly normal. It's really just those parts that facilitate the transformation that make it extremely jank. And it's going to impact this kit in a few ways. One, durability. You have to be very careful when you handle this kit. A lot of those connection points, like I said, use C-clips or are very fragile, so you need to be extremely careful. Otherwise, you're going to do what I did and snap one of the C-clips, and your V2 is going to have a hole in its back, at least for the standard core fighter. But yeah, moving into aesthetics, the Victory 2 Gundam, I think it's the first protagonist suit designed by Kotoki, and it shows in kind of a little bit of the awkwardness of the design. A lot of people like this design. I like parts of it, but in general, I prefer the Victory 1 Gundam, especially the V-Dash. If I can ever find a reprint of that kit, who knows how much it'll cost after tariffs, but if I can ever find that kit, I'm definitely going to pick one up. But yeah, you have the kind of sleekness of this kit in the very kind of organic, kind of curved shapes in the arms and legs, which definitely lends itself a lot better to a glass top coat. I think it looks great in glass. Kind of clashing with the torso and the core fighter. The torso is extremely blocky. It's very, very UC in design. It's very much kind of a square, and you can see the late UC inspiration for mobile suit designs from Cars, especially in the chest intakes as this spins around. The giant golden V that's made up from the center of the kind of top of the chest alongside the backs of the boosters is very striking. I think it looks very good, especially in this very nice metallic gold that comes in specifically the Assault Buster kit. I think in the standard yellow of the base kit, it's not going to look as good. In this metallic muted gold, it looks very, very nice. Yeah, aesthetically, apart from, of course, the red rings that are color correcting stickers they need to put on the side skirts, the elbows, and the knees, this kit is pretty much entirely color accurate except for some parts on the kind of Buster Gundam parts, but we'll talk about that later. Weirdly enough, when I was looking at the line art for the Assault Buster, it doesn't even have the red rings on the sides of the elbows and such, so I think that might be an addition made for the model kit. I haven't seen Victory, so I don't know if it's like just a thing in the show and it's a small color error in the line art, but yeah. But aesthetically, this kit's quite interesting, and if you're a fan of the V2 Gundam, this kit definitely does it justice. I think it looks... It's one of those cases where I wasn't too big a fan of the design. I've warmed up to it a little bit since seeing it in model kit form, but I think it definitely looks better as the Assault Buster Gundam. The base V2 is a little off to me. So getting into a quick size comparison, here's the base of V2 Gundam next to a standard size high grade being the high grade Blue Destiny Unit 1, and a standard size master grade being the Master Grade Jib Sniper 2 White Dingo team. So as you can see, this kit is... I was expecting it to be like a bit smaller than this, honestly, because it's a late UC kit, so these mobile suits are smaller than they're they typically are in a lot of other series, with the average Gundam head height being 18 meters. This one's... I thought it was 14.5, but I think it's 15.5, which makes it significantly closer to the average size. As you can see here, it's maybe half an inch shorter than the standard size Jib Sniper 2 over there. So yeah, head height wise, it is going to take up a little less space on your shelf, but keep in mind the gigantic boosters on the back to make up that big golden V. Especially once we mount the Assault and Buster Gundam parts on it, it's going to take up a lot more space, so just keep that in mind when you're considering shelf space. So normally this is about the part in the review where I talk about where the color correcting stickers are in this kit. I'm actually going to talk about those when I take a look at the Assault Buster Gundam parts. I'm kind of flying through the V2 Gundam section because, again, this isn't the main focus of what's in the box. Of course, it is the Assault and Buster Gundam parts. So for accessories, here's the V2 Gundam with specifically all the accessories that the V2 Gundam would have come with. Of course, you have an extra core fighter here. Again, I think in the V2 this would have just been a standard core fighter, not mounted with the Buster Gundam parts here. That is unique to the Assault Buster set. But getting into the hand options, of course, these are going to be a kind of fixed post swappable finger style hands, which I really like. The thumb is going to be on a ball joint. And for the hand options, you will, of course, get the two closed fists that I have on the kit right now. You will have nice open expressive hands, one for each side. You will have a pair of trigger finger hands, one for each side. You will have a pair of standard holding hands, one for each side. And then you will have these kind of spare, very simplified hands that you're not actually supposed to use with the kit in mobile suit mode. This is, of course, for the transformation to the top fighter. You will use these, again, very simplified, kind of like almost like pincer-like hands. Again, I'm not going to show off the top and bottom fighter because I'm afraid I'm going to break something. So yeah, I'm not really going to be using those. In terms of action base adapters, you will of course have a standard action base adapter here to use with this kind of bottom cap piece that holds the bottom of the waist together, but you will also get a piece that kind of fuses the two together as a bottom cap piece that has a peg sticking out the bottom to mount in an action base, so that's what I have on the kit right now. You will also get these two clear action base adapters for posing the core fighter flying. You also have two sets of clear landing gears to pose them just kind of on the ground, which is what I have on the core fighter right now. You will get a standing pilot figure of Shakti right here that you can pose next to the kit on the shelf, just for like a sense of scale. In terms of your ranged weapons for the V2 Gundam, you will of course get the standard V2 beam rifle, which is, I said it earlier, it's my favorite kind of protagonist Gundam standard beam rifle. I think it looks great. You do of course have a point of articulation here with this kind of side part. The barrel can rotate for when it's mounted onto the top fighter, and I think you're supposed to kind of stick this out when it's mounted onto the fighter, otherwise it just kind of forms a almost hand guard alongside the bottom here. In addition to the two large cameras you have on the top here, you also have an auxiliary camera that can pop out on either side. So when it pops out, it's a little hard to get into, but you can pop them out. There's one on either side with a little green metallic sticker there. Of course, you're not supposed to use both at once. It's just for whatever side is closer to the head, depending on if you're wielding it with the right or the left arm. And of course on the bottom here you have a very large kind of missile launcher, I think. I know like the Crossbone Gundam, it can equip like a nuke with its ranged weapon. I don't know if that's what this is supposed to be, but yeah, you can either equip this one kind of a large missile, or you can mount a grenade launcher onto the bottom. So with the standard V2 gun, I'm just going to show it off like this with the large missile on the bottom. With the Assault Buster parts on, I'm going to put the grenade launcher onto the rifle. And of course you have your beam effects. So starting here, you have your two standard kind of beam saber effects in clear pink. These are going to be a bit thinner than your standard 1/100 scale beam saber effect part. Normally there's kind of a flare out on the bottom before it tapers off. This is just kind of thin all the way to the end, and I believe these are a little bit shorter than your standard beam saber effect parts. And of course you have two unique beam effect parts for this Gundam. You will have the beam fan here that doubles as both a melee weapon and a kind of half beam shield. So I'm going to pose it with this. I'm not really going to show it off with the beam saber effect parts because again, we've seen a million of those already in other master grade kits. This is unique to this kit, so I'm going to show it off with this. And then of course you have this beam shield effect part, which kind of mounts onto the elbow caps, which can swing out as I mentioned earlier. And of course with the other kind of beam effects that I showed off earlier, you can use it with the beam sabers, which are stored in the elbows. Just pop this cap off. Yep, and the beam saber will just be attached there. These are fairly standard beam sabers. They are of course scaled to the V2 Gundam, so they're going to be a little smaller than you might expect for beam sabers, with a bit of a unique, interesting kind of flare out at the top. So we'll see how those look with the beam fan in a bit. So getting into articulation now, this is kind of the weakest part of this kit in my opinion, as you'll see here. Starting with the head, of course. Unfortunately, this is as far as it could look up, about in line with its torso, which is a bit of a shame. You can kind of tilt it back a little bit, but you need to pop the assembly down to do that, so I don't know if that's intended. But yes, it could look up a tiny bit above its chest, and looking down, it can look down very far, which is quite nice. You will get a pretty typical side-to-side tilt, and of course the head can rotate a full 360 degrees. For shoulders then, the shoulders can rotate up, although I believe this is to mount the Assault, the V2 Assault extra shoulder armor parts, but yeah, you can tilt this up. Of course this flap can articulate, and for side raises, that gives the arm a lift of a little bit more than 90 degrees before it's going to want to pop off this kind of upper shoulder piece here. You will of course get a full 360 rotation about a peg. Just be careful with how large that elbow is, it will pop off the peg quite easily. For the elbow then, you will have a nice double bend here, giving a full 180 degree bend. This flap can articulate and swing back. Of course that is to allow this red piece to swing forward to use with the beam shield. As I showed off earlier, the cap can pop off, and when you want to use the beam shield, you just kind of insert the beam shield effect part here and then put the cap back on to kind of clip it into place. And of course the forearms can rotate to allow the elbow to swing out forward. That's also for the transformation to the top fighter. Your wrist is going to be on a ball joint, which will do ball joint things, and of course the thumb with the swappable style fingers is going to be on a ball joint. No point of articulation in the middle. So if we get to the torso now, And this is where all the articulation falls apart, because as I alluded to earlier, all of the articulation points between the chest and the waist mean that they are basically they are effectively fused together. You can separate them, but in terms of articulation, it is completely rigid. You are not rotating that torso at all. There is no ab crunch to speak of. There is no side tilt. There is no articulation in the torso, which makes posing this kit a little awkward. It's definitely very stiff. This is one of those kits where you might want to consider just having it in a neutral pose on the shelf, looking cool, letting the gold kind of shine and give it a lot of presence, especially with the extra equipment mounted onto it. But yeah, torso, no articulation whatsoever. On the back then, these kind of boosters here, these bottom parts open up. A lot of this is for the transformation between core fighter and mobile suit mode. I think these are just supposed to stay open, and these are just supposed to stay tilted outward to form a big V. But yeah, moving on to the waist then, of course, the front skirts are on separate ball joints, and they have a lot more rotation than you would normally expect. Again, this is for, I believe this is for the transformation into the bottom fighter. But yeah, the side skirts, while minimal, can swing about a marginal amount. The back skirt can rotate outward to give a better back kick. And speaking of kicks, for the legs, they're just on polycap ball joints. So for front kicks, you will get about 90 degrees before, again, it pops off or it collides with the skirt armor. Yeah, about 90 degrees. For side raises, unfortunately, this leg design only allows a very marginal, like maybe 30-degree side raise. This is very bad. For rear kicks, you will get about 45 degrees. So yeah, leg kick articulation is quite poor. There is very minimal rotation of the leg to speak of. Unfortunately, there is no kind of swing mechanism or anything with those polycap ball joints. This leg is just kind of here. The knee will give you a full double bend, which is quite nice before the shin collides with the thigh. This kneecap piece can swing upwards to give kind of the illusion that it's protecting more of the leg. This ankle armor can kind of wiggle around a little bit, but not too much major articulation. The foot, there is some toe separation, but that is mostly to facilitate the transformation because, again, this can rotate down 90 degrees. I don't know why you would ever do that in mobile suit mode. There is very minimal foot tilt. There is a very slight tilt down and a more substantial tilt up, but nothing too crazy. So yeah, articulation is quite poor across the board. Head articulation is about average. Arm articulation is fine, but it is the torso, the waist, and the legs where the kind of problems of this kit being designed as a transformable suit first kind of come into play. So we'll see what kinds of poses this thing can pull off right now. So getting the V2 Gundam into a bit of a spin, starting with the usual running and gunning pose. This is to illustrate a couple of things. One, despite the kit's kind of brickiness when it comes to posing, it is still stable enough to maintain a running pose. And two, the lack of articulation, especially in the legs, is very much hurting this kit in terms of how natural ground poses look. The inability for the legs to lift to the sides to any meaningful degree in particular really makes this look really unnatural. In addition, the inability for the torso to kind of flex at all gives it this kind of about to topple over look that looks really unnatural in any kind of movement on the ground. If you're going to have this kit on the ground, just have it standing neutrally or in a slight defensive pose. This doesn't look all that great. There are parts of this kit that I really like the kind of organicness and the curves of the limbs looks pretty good in motion, and the rifle also looks really good in this running and gunning pose, but again, it's mostly the inability to articulate the torso so it looks like the boosters on the back are giving it any extra kind of thrust, or to manipulate the legs to make it look less stiff than they actually are. So yeah, I wouldn't really recommend posing it like this. So getting it into a slight defensive pose with the beam fan out here, while I really like the beam fan, unfortunately, the lack of articulation of the legs and torso really hampers the ability to make the V2 look like it is actually kind of bracing for an impact. I mentioned with the last pose that it might look better defensively. Again, that's pretty much reserved entirely for the beam shield. The beam fan, which is supposed to be like a weird mix of like a half shield and melee weapon, doesn't look the greatest when it's posed like this. Again, outside of neutral poses, it's kind of hard to get the V2 into any kind of super dynamic pose that would look great with the beam fan. So yeah, while I really like the beam effect, it's not the greatest, and I wouldn't really recommend posing it like this on the shelf. As a side note, the hands I have a bit of an issue with. While I really appreciate the swappable style fingers they included in the box, unfortunately there aren't really any tabs or anything to help it actually grip onto the weapons properly. The beam rifle especially was very loose and kind of floppy in the hand and kept wanting to pop the fingers out whenever I adjusted it. So yeah, just keep that in mind. It's kind of weirdly difficult to get it to actually hold anything properly. So getting it into the air, showing it off in a kind of graceful forward flying pose with the blue Wings of Light effect parts on the back here. So this is showing off a couple of things. One, you may notice it wobbling a lot. There's a reason why the Action Base 13 was included in the Wings of Light pack. Putting the Wings of Light in makes this kit exceptionally back heavy, so unless you do a lot of significant adjustment to a stand, like I think this is a knockoff Action Base 5, but it is not stable enough to really hold it without significantly adjusting the angle that it's in. I would pose it with the Action Base 13, but again, it's too big to rotate properly in my booth. But yeah, the Wings of Light are extremely impressive, especially on the base V2. You'll see it when I put the Assault Buster parts on, but here the size of them in contrast to the smallness of the base V2 is very striking. This kind of very light transparent shade of blue also contrasts nicely with the darker blue of the main V2's body, and overall the Wings of Light are definitely something I would recommend getting, even if you just have the base Master Grade V2 Ver Ka. They are just a great addition to pose the kit with, and it looks fantastic in the air like this. The articulation doesn't really hamper when it's just doing kind of a basic forward flying pose like this. So yeah, this looks great, and if I were to pose it as the standard V2 on my shelf, this is definitely the pose I would have it in. But of course, the standard V2 isn't the only thing in the box. Let's get it kitted up with the Assault Buster parts. Alright, welcome back. Here's the Victory 2 Assault Buster Gundam with all of the Assault and Buster parts mounted onto it. You may notice it's doing a bit of a lean, as you might expect, especially with the Buster equipment mounted onto it. This kit is very back heavy, which makes it kind of baffling that they didn't include an Action Base 13 with this kit. I probably mentioned it earlier in the posing section, but especially with the Wings of Light attached onto it, you basically need the Action Base 13. I managed to make it work with a bootleg Action Base, I think it's a 4, but because of how back heavy the kit is, the stand was threatening to fall over at any time. So getting into the build for the additional Assault and Buster parts, there isn't really much to say in terms of the actual construction of the parts themselves. The metallic gold looks fantastic, but in terms of assembly, all of it's fairly standard. There isn't really too much jank or odd with it. The jank and odd parts come with mounting it onto the kit and the build stability once they're actually on the kit, especially with these extra back-mounted weapons for the Buster, with the beam spray pod and the mega beam cannon. There's a small series of like ridges that this kind of back section with the tail fin kind of fits onto in the core fighter, especially with these extra parts mounted on. It just doesn't want to fit in, it just keeps wanting to pop out and tilt backwards, so the actual kind of stability of the core fighter is a bit compromised. So especially if you want to display it with it as the top and bottom fighter, again, I don't know why you would, but if you want to do that, then just keep in mind that the core fighter with the Buster equipment is going to want to kind of fall over at any given time. Actually mounting the equipment on is a little annoying. There were multiple points where parts were just falling off this kit as I was trying to mount it, especially with these Assault shoulders. Every time I tried to mount it on, this kind of white piece on the elbow would just pop out because it's only held in with a couple of very small pegs. The kind of red elbow piece with the beam saber kept wanting to pop out. It's all very kind of tedious. The legs, the Buster parts, are mostly okay. It's pretty much the Assault parts that have the problems with mounting. As this spins around, you'll notice the kind of golden extra crotch armor that is barely held in with a tab in the center original crotch armor. It pops out extremely easily. Same thing with these kneecaps. The original blue caps underneath will pop out if you touch the gold caps the wrong way. So this kit is definite, especially with the Assault and Buster parts mounted, this kit is very much form over function. It is a complete looker. I'm going to spoil it now. Posing is slightly worse than in the standard V2 form, so this is definitely a brick that you're probably going to want to have in either a neutral standing pose on the shelf, just looking cool with all this extra stuff mounted onto it, or in a very generic kind of forward flying charging pose, because again, as you saw earlier in the V2 articulation section, posing is not this kit's strong suit. In fact, it's the weakest part of this kit by far. So getting into aesthetics, the added kind of Buster and Assault parts are all very interesting. Again, you don't really expect to see this bulky of a kit in this small a size. Again, it's about like kind of high-grade New Gundam height in between a standard high-grade and Master Grade. But yeah, the extra added mass and all these extra angles and edges definitely serves to kind of round out this kit's aesthetic. I mentioned earlier in the base V2 section that there's kind of a disparity in between the sleekness of the arms and legs and the very boxy, angular chest. This kind of evens that with all the added bulk and all the added extra angles and geometry across all of the limbs. There's less of a disparity between them and the chest now, which overall serves to make a more kind of cohesive aesthetic for the V2 Assault Buster, which I'm definitely a fan of. Again, this metallic gold looks fantastic, much better than the standard kind of yellow on the base kit or the gross kind of injection gold of the high grade, which we'll take a look at in a visual comparison in a bit. In terms of color accuracy, apart from the color correcting stickers, which we'll go over in a moment, the Assault and Buster Gundam parts are almost perfect. The only thing I noticed that wasn't color accurate to the line art was you see these ridges on the beam spray pod and the Mega Beam Cannon. Those are supposed to be red in the line art. Again, it's just one piece in white on this kit. But again, considering the liberties they took with the red rings on all of the kind of joint parts, that might not be a color inaccuracy, that might just be a design choice. With all the tiny parts in this kit, if they wanted it to be red, they definitely could have made it red. So yeah. Color accuracy wise, this kit is essentially perfect as you would expect, and it's definitely enhanced by a gloss top coat and all the water slide decals. Again, I didn't do all of them. I didn't apply all of them, as you can see, but I did apply most of them. It took quite a while, that's why this video is so late. The water slide decals were just really annoying to work with, and the build and assembling this kit also took a long time because it's very odd, as I mentioned in the earlier sections. But yeah, getting into the color correcting stickers. All right, as you can see, I did use all of the color correcting stickers on this foil sticker sheet. So starting with sticker 1, you get 2 of them because there are, of course, 2 core fighters and 2 different heads. Also to mention is that they include an optional kind of target finder scope part that goes over one of the eyes, like the eye patch from the Crossbone Gundam. Again, I put it on this head, I didn't put it on the other head because I think the extra targeting kind of sensor here makes more sense for the Assault Buster Gundam and less so for the standard V2. So sticker 1 is going to be a standard kind of eye sticker that goes on the head, 1 for each head, in green and black. Stickers 2 and 3 are going to be the head cameras. Sticker 2 is going to be this front head camera here, and you probably can't see it with all the extra equipment. Sticker 3 is a rear head camera in the back there. Yeah, it's really hard to see. And so grabbing the extra core fighter from the standard V2, as you can see, sticker 3 is going to be this foil green rear head camera sticker. Sticker 4 you get 2 small circles for the auxiliary cameras on the beam rifle, the parts that slide out, as I showed off earlier. This small kind of metallic green circle sticker, you get 1 for each side of the kind of extending auxiliary camera. Sticker 5 you get 4 of, 2 for each core fighter. For the kind of booster sections, these black details on the inside are stickers. This is just one solid kind of gold piece that goes in there. Again, that's all kind of reasonable, something that you might expect. Stickers 6 and 7 are going to be on the beam rifle for the kind of camera parts. Sticker 6 is going to be this large main camera on the bottom here, and sticker 7 is going to be the auxiliary camera on top. Stickers 8 and 9 are both blue foil stickers for the assault armor parts. Sticker 8 is going to be this large hexagonal part and the crotch armor, and sticker 9 you get 2 of are going to be the rectangles in the knees. Sticker 10 is going to be on the assault V2's shield, these 3 red trapezoid foil stickers. And stickers 11 and 12, 11 you get 2 of, and 12 you get 8 of. Those are all the red rings around the joints and stuff. You can't see most of them with the added Buster armor parts and the added Vespers on the waist from the Assault Gundam, but they're all there, as you saw with the standard V2 Gundam. So in terms of accessories, here's the V2 Assault Buster Gundam with all of the accessories that comes with it that are unique to it, as in all the accessories I did not cover in the standard V2 section earlier. Starting, of course, with the main kind of added handheld weapon on the kit. It's going to be the Mega Beam Rifle. There's plenty of articulation. This is kind of the inert form when you want to mount it on the top or bottom fighter. Again, I'm not showing that off because I'm afraid of breaking something. So when you want to use it in active form, of course, this part will flip out to reveal the handle. This white section will pop down, this blue section will pop up, and the white kind of railgun barrel thing will slide forward to give a very kind of long-ranged weapon. As you can see, it is taller than the V2 Assault Buster itself, even with including the boosters and all the added accessories. So yeah, this is quite a large weapon and will give it quite a lot of presence on the shelf. In lieu of the standard beam shield, because the way these mount is you actually remove the elbow caps and just attach this kind of attachment point into where they would go, so you can't use the beam shield if you want to use the conventional shield. Kind of makes sense. Same thing with the Mega Beam Rifle, that also clips onto the elbow for added stability. But yeah, here's a more conventional kind of standard shield, very nice decals that you're supposed to apply onto this shield. I applied a bonus like kind of Ligue Militaire logo in the center there. It's very kind of interesting with all these varied colors. Definitely in stark contrast to the high grade, where this basically the entire color separation of it is just one big sticker. You also have these kind of extra shield bits, which are supposed to be able to kind of fly around and protect the V2 Assault Buster, but As you can see, there aren't really any real ways to mount it without scratch building an adapter or something for like a Wish for Mercury weapon display base or something like that, so I'm not going to be displaying it kind of flying around. But if you want to scratch build something, you can. Otherwise, this is just a quite nice standard shield. Of course, you're going to have a handle in the back that can rotate if you want to have it kind of grabbing onto the handle, projecting the shield in front of it. Of course, coming with the beams, of course, coming with the Wings of Light accessory set, as I mentioned earlier, you get this very nice Action Base 13. Not much to say here. The Action Base 13 is probably the best one Bandai's ever made. It is a real shame that they don't sell this standalone. And the only real downside for it, as you can see, is it's extremely large, and the main reason why I don't really display it in the booth, kind of rotating kits around, it's so big it can't really spin around and fit in the booth at the same time. And then you have all of these parts for the kind of various missile pods located all over the Buster V2 armor parts. Of course, you're going to have those kind of closed door sections on the front skirts, on the sides of the legs, and on the rear back skirt. And all of those closed door parts can be exchanged for these kind of open missile pod sections. It's kind of hard to see unless you're like really close up to it like it is to the camera right here. But yeah, there's just some nice molded missile detail here. I'm not going to exchange all the parts because it's a giant pain in the ass, and when it's on the shelf, it's kind of hard to see the difference anyway. But yeah, you can do that if you want. Okay, so before I get into a visual comparison with the high-grade V2 Assault Buster, first let's get into the articulation of the kit. Of course, a lot of this articulation is going to be the same as the standard V2, so I'm going to gloss over those parts. The head articulation is going to be essentially identical to the standard V2, so I'm not going to go into that. Of course, on the back here, with the extra cannon parts, they can rotate down as needed or up when they're kind of inert, like so. But just keep in mind, this will take up a lot of extra vertical space on your shelf. These shoulders, the rotation is going to be much more limited upwards because of how bulky the additional Assault Gundam parts are, which will limit the side raise slightly to just under 90 degrees, where before it was just over 90 degrees. Double bend in the elbow will remain pretty much intact. Oh, yep, see, there it is. The crotch armor is very loose on there. Apart from the articulation in the arm is essentially unchanged, so I'm not going to get into that. Again, the torso and the waist are the same, so extremely poor articulation across the board. Not going to get too in-depth into that. The skirt articulation is essentially the same, except for the Vespers on the sides, which can kind of swing forward like so, and when in use, these front parts can kind of split apart. When in use, the front parts can open up like so to kind of pose the kit like it's firing off the waist-mounted Vespers. Leg articulation is going to be similarly poor to before. Yep, see, there it is, the knee parts popping out super easily. Alright, leg articulation is going to be a bit worse than before. Oh, okay, everything is just falling apart on this kit. Yeah, leg articulation is going to be a bit worse than before, only reaching a little bit more than 45 degrees on the front kick. Side kick will remain a similarly poor, almost like not even 30-degree side raise. Back kick will remain about the same with the side skirts on, about 45 degrees. Double bend in the knee is preserved, but as you can see, the kneecaps fall off extremely easily. And foot articulation is going to be the same as before. See, in general, articulation is worse in the arms and legs, but again, you can't even articulate super far before the entire kit starts falling apart. It's very hand grenadey in that aspect. And before we get into posing real quick, here's a visual comparison between the Master Grade V2 Assault Buster Ver and the standard release high grade V2 Assault Buster Ver. So this kind of emphasizes what I was talking about before with function versus form. In terms of form, obviously the Master Grade is going to look better. The gold actually being gold instead of the weird injection curry color is definitely a much more welcome thing. And in general, the details replicate a lot more faithfully. For example, on the shield for the high grade, it's really just a sticker for the yellow, black, and red parts, whereas on the Master Grade's shield, it is actually like color-separated parts, especially with that metallic gold, which certainly looks a lot better on the shield. You also have details on the Smart Gun you also have details on the Mega Beam Rifle, for instance, with the Master Grade's kind of inner frame rail part actually being color-separated in gray instead of being one large blue piece. You have very nice color separation in the back here with black frame poking out, and in general, it's just a much more complete, better looking model. Of course, it is a Master Grade versus a high grade after all, but the high grade shines in terms of function, in terms of posability and stability, because the inner kind of mechanics and frame of it is a typical high grade, so it would pose exactly the same way a high grade would, whereas the Master Grade, they made the frame very different to accommodate the transformations, which heavily compromised the posability. In everything but a neutral kind of standing pose, the high grade can actually pull off more believable poses than the Master Grade. The lack of torso swivel, the lack of side leg kicks, the lack of shoulder swing, all that contributes to what could be called arthritic posing. It's just, it doesn't look great for the it doesn't look great on the Master Grade, which you will see right now. So getting the V2 Assault Buster into a bit of a spin here, starting with a neutral ground pose, because this kit is a gigantic hand grenade and even brickier than the standard V2. Just getting it all out of the way now. Even getting it to hold the equipment, the shield, the rifle, and the mega beam rifle was a giant pain in the ass. Every time I would like make some headway in getting one of the weapons into the hands, it would vibrate the kit just enough that like the back skirt would pop off, and then I would clip the back skirt back in, and then the vibration would shake the kneecap off. And then when I was putting the kneecap on, my finger would brush the front crotch armor, that would fly out. And then when I put that on, the other knee would fall off, and then eventually, like once I got that on, that would twist the leg just enough that the leg pops off the socket, and then that shock of the kit almost tipping over, me having to catch it, would knock the weapon out of the hand. It was a huge struggle to get it to even hold everything. That's part of why this video is coming out so late. It took me multiple hours to even get the equipment in and natural looking. Once the equipment's in, especially the smart gun and the shield clipped into the elbow caps, they are mostly secure. It's mainly the beam rifle that really struggles to hold in the hand, especially when it keeps like knocking into the beam shield. In addition, the beam shield's kind of joint that it uses to connect into the arm is quite weak. It keeps rotating and shifting regardless of how much I try to like kind of hold it in place in line with the arm. You'll see that in some future poses, but yeah, here it is in a neutral ground pose, looking all impressive with all that extra gold shining on it, all the extra equipment contributing to the volume this will take up on your shelf and giving it a lot of presence. It does look quite good. This is definitely a kit that I would consider a contender for just keeping it in the neutral A pose, and it looks just fine. And I feel like a lot of people will have this on their shelf in this pose, especially if you don't have the Wings of Light bonus parts, because this thing does not pose very well, as you'll see in a bit. It's very stiff, it's very difficult. The lack of articulation, especially with the added armor parts, becomes even more apparent than the standard V2. It just looks really awkward in a lot of poses. This pose is probably something a lot of people will just display this kit on their shelf as doing, and it is fine. So getting the kit into the air, doing a kind of downward firing pose off to the side with the mega beam rifle. This shows off what I was saying earlier about the awkwardness of this kit really hampering how natural the poses look. Again, the inability to tilt the torso to kind of give a more dynamic kind of, the V2 has to direct its attention to actually fire. The inability to kick the legs further back to give the impression that it's flying forward at maximum speed. This looks kind of limp and awkward with just having to bend the knees and tilt the leg slightly back to express that it's flying forward. As you saw right there, tilting the mega beam rifle off to the side will push the kind of cover for the back thruster unit upwards. So you couldn't do this if you want to have the Wings of Light installed. Again, this kit, the lack of lateral movement on many of the parts makes firing off to the side like this look extremely unnatural. It does not look great and is not something I would recommend posing it on in the shelf. In addition, the kind of volume this takes up, combined with the kind of lopsided weight distribution of this kit, makes balancing it on any stand other than the Action Base 13 that comes with the Wings of Light very difficult. So yeah, again, if you want to get the V2 Assault Buster, I would heavily recommend you get the Wings of Light expansion set alongside it, if only for the Action Base 13 inside. That really helps keep this thing stable if you want to pose it flying. And speaking of the Wings of Light, here it is in a forward kind of upward flying charging pose, firing all of its weapons forward, or as most of its weapons forward. The Vespers and the Waist don't have firing in this pose, with the Wings of Light flying behind it. This time I have the pink Wings of Light on it, and this pose looks great. Again, this is a extremely basic pose that pretty much every kit should be able to hit, but it is one of the only poses that this kit can hit, because again, the posing is very bricky, it's borderline arthritic. You're extremely limited in the limb pose ability, so just having a basic bend in the arms and a basic knee bend and a slight kickback in the legs is really all you need to have this kit look good. And again, the kind of presence of the weapons and the Wings of Light speaks for itself, alongside the metallic gold of this kit. Again, I think gloss top coat is definitely the way to go for the V2, and it definitely shows all of the shininess of this kit, the presence that the wings provide. All of it gives this very kind of unique, over-the-top, super angular presence on your shelf that really stands out. This is a pretty nice centerpiece to any collection, kind of similar to the Hyakushiki if you have that. It's just so unique and draws the eye so easily that it is definitely a fantastic option to pose it in. Again, this is one of the only poses it can pull off, and it's pretty much the only pose you really need it to pull off, because it doesn't really look good doing anything else. So you're either probably going to have it in a standing neutral pose or a flying pose. Again, make sure to use the Action Base 13. I had to very gingerly balance it on this stand to get it to even like look proper. It kept wanting to tip over. Again, the balance of this kit is all over the place, especially with the added parts on it. But yeah, it looks fantastic, and I think the hassle is more than worth it to achieve this pose. So in conclusion, the Master Grade V2 Assault Buster Ver is definitely a kit that exists. It is the epitome of form over function. It looks like fantastic. It's a gorgeous kit. But the compromises they had to make to the build to get it to be able to transform into the top and bottom fighter, and all of the gimmicks they include with it, mean that articulation is severely hamstrung. You're not going to get many kind of natural looking poses out of it. It's really cool that they include all of those gimmicks, like being able to turn to the top and bottom fighter, being able to fully transform the core fighter into the torso, having the elbow caps kind of swing forward to deploy the beam shield, or to pop out the beam sabers for the beam fan. All of it is really cool that they included it, and it makes it kind of a complete representation of the V2 in Master Grade form, but it severely hurts it in terms of posability. The posing of this kit on your shelf is going to be extremely limited. The very limited mobility of the legs in particular is going to be a very, very kind of big negative point against this kit. The torso being unable to rotate is another one. Again, most poses that you would want to put this kit in aren't going to look very dynamic if you can pull them off at all. Defensive poses don't look that great, especially with the limited ankle articulation, meaning you can't really have the feet flat on the ground most of the time. The limited torso articulation means any melee pose, you can't really have the Gundam look like it's kind of turning its torso to match the swing and put extra force into it. And the limited back and side kicks on the legs mean you can't really manipulate the legs to look like the Gundam is putting extra force in or speed into its movements to do whatever more dynamically. It's not a very kinetic kit. It looks quite poor in a lot of poses that aren't neutral or flying charging forward. So again, just know what you're getting into. So would I recommend this kit? A very hard maybe. Depends on how much of a fan you are of the V2. If you're not a fan of how this kit looks, now the metallic of the V2 Assault Buster might change your mind. It does look quite good in that, but if you're not super into the design and you like kind of the posability of your model kits, especially if you like to repose it on the shelf every now and then, this kit is not a recommendation. I would not recommend this kit at all. The extremely bricky nature of this kit combined with the hand grenade-y parts of this kit mean you need a lot of patience to work with this. Parts were just falling off constantly every time I tried to pose it, as I was talking about earlier. It was just a very frustrating experience overall. I don't think I've been this frustrated with a kit I've taken a look at on this channel since the Zeta Plus, and that was a kit from 1998 or whatever. So seeing I think this is a 2018 release, evoke that same level of frustration is definitely not something I was expecting, and not something I would want to recommend to other people. So yeah, unless you're a super fan of the design, just avoid this kit. I wouldn't really recommend it. If you want this mobile suit for your collection and you can't find this kit because, again, it's a P-Bandai exclusive and it is getting scalped to hell, then I would definitely recommend the high grade over this. The high grade being a standard release is more readily available, and it's a fantastic kit. There is some issue with the gold looking pretty gross, but that's easily fixed with like a quick paint job with a metallic Gundam marker. The stickers look not great, but again, it's easy enough to mask off and paint in those details. So yeah, I would definitely recommend the high grade over this if you're not dead set on getting specifically like the Master Grade V2 Assault Buster with the metallic gold and the extra kind of scale of the kit. So yeah, TLDR, not really a recommend unless you're a super fan of this design. If you just kind of want this design in your collection for variety, get the high grade. So yeah, that was my review of the Master Grade V2 Assault Buster Ver. What do you think of this kit? Let me know in the comments below. If you like reviews like these, please consider subscribing to my channel. If you like this video, give it a like. Sorry this video took so long to make. This kit was almost a nightmare to get built properly without breaking anything. And again, I did break a couple of things, which really didn't help. And kind of posing this kit was extremely frustrating. It took much longer than usual. So yeah, I will see you next time with my review of the Master Grade Gundam Stormbringer PF. I'll see you then.